Hi loves, I hope you're all okay. I thought I'd just pop on and give you guys a bit of an update as to where we've been. It just didn't feel right me coming back to YouTube and doing the usual styling videos and vlogs and everything when behind the scenes things have been really tough. Possibly the hardest thing I've ever been through. So yeah, I'm going to be talking about that today. I don't know how much in detail I'm going to go into things. It depends how I kind of feel when it comes to talking about it. This is the first time I've kind of sat down and thought I'm gonna film this. So as you've probably already guessed from the title, unfortunately Lee and I lost our baby 8 weeks ago. It's still super raw when I say it like that. It feels like it's been months to us because it's kind of been a very long process in terms of what we've gone through. But yeah, it has only been 8 weeks, so I think it's really important for me to do this video because what's happened to me is really rare, and when I was going through it there wasn't any videos out there or a lot of information on it, and it made me feel quite lonely and a bit scared and lost. And I know miscarriage is such an awful traumatic experience to go through, and so many women unfortunately go through it, and it's just awful. And obviously your partners experience that trauma as well as your families. So yeah, it's just awful. And if my video can help anyone feel less lonely in terms of whatever baby loss or miscarriage or anything you've gone through like that, then I hope it does help. I'm probably just going to start from the beginning and kind of go through and then talk about how I'm feeling and how I was feeling at the time, because I found that listening to other women's stories or reading about other women's stories really helped me. As guilty as I feel saying that, it does make you feel less alone. So yeah, I'm just going to go back to the start, when we found out we were pregnant, and kind of go from there. So rewind back to me when I found out I was pregnant. We were both so over the moon. I've always had this horrendous fear that I can't get pregnant. I don't know why. I just have always it's always been in the back of my mind. I've always worried about it. So I felt extremely lucky to fall pregnant naturally, and I was so grateful and couldn't believe it really. I was like really proud of my body and overwhelmed, like, oh my gosh, this has actually happened for us, like this is amazing. And we told like close friends and family quite early on, because we did have like a crazy hectic summer planned and we had to cancel a few plans, and our friends would have known, and you know, it was just, we were so excited about it to share the news. So we did. So those like first 3 months were like so lovely and happy and exciting. Being the worrier that I am though, I did want to get an early scan, so we booked in for a private scan at 8 weeks and everything was looking absolutely fine. We saw a heartbeat, they were tiny at that point, and it was just amazing. Don't want to get upset. I said I wasn't going to cry on YouTube, but I think just talking about it obviously brings things back. Sorry about that, got a bit teary. So yeah, well, that was like a really happy moment. We were so relieved. And it was really, and I'm really glad I did that, because I've now got videos and pictures to look back on as well. And then obviously went on with life as normal, still feeling quite poorly, but it was just a feeling of sickness. There was nothing really, I didn't have any other symptoms that could tell that there was something wrong really. It was just quite normal. And then I had some spotting around 11 weeks. So it was literally like, I think it was about 4 days before my scan. So I'd had some spotting and it was quite painful to wee. So I thought, oh, maybe I've got an infection or something, because it can be quite common when you're pregnant. So I don't want that to scare anyone, by the way. Like spotting and infections can be very common when you're pregnant as well. So I contacted the emergency gynecology unit because I was under 16 weeks. So they did like an internal examination. Everything looked fine. And I didn't get a scan because I was getting my scan in 2 days. Results came back normal, didn't have an infection. So I just thought everything's absolutely fine. And then it came to the day of the scan and I was really excited. This is like the first like official scan with the NHS. So yeah, I was a little bit nervous, but mainly excited. Then we got in the room, and it's always quite nerve-wracking with a scan, because even with my private one, they're taking like a few moments to just like measure things and just looking over checking things and everything. But yeah, she was strangely quiet for quite a long time. And I just remember staring at the ceiling and being like, oh, I just have a bad feeling that something's not right. And the dreaded words that you don't want to hear came, and she said, I'm really sorry, Nina, but there's no heartbeat. And I was just trying to like fight back the tears. I couldn't even look at the screen. I couldn't even look at Lee. That was the worst. Like, so horrible. I did say I wasn't gonna cry on YouTube. But it's good to cry. It's okay to cry. I just want to be able to try and tell a story. Whew. Sorry about that. I just really struggled talking about this bit. So then she had to get another sonographer to come in and just double check. And she had to unfortunately confirm it again. They were both so lovely and compassionate in the way they told me as well, which looking back I appreciate so much. And then we were actually taken into the quiet room, which is a room I hope to never have to go in again. And then we waited there for about, I'd say like 15-20 minutes. And I just remember we were just both really sad, crying, couldn't believe what was going on really. And then the doctor came down and was quite matter of fact about what was going on, which took me back at the time, but in hindsight I am quite grateful for that, because it was kind of, it wasn't dragged out. It was kind of like, this is what's happening and this is what needs to happen. And anyway, I'll explain. But she said sorry for your loss, and then began to explain that I've had a very rare form of pregnancy, which is called a partial molar pregnancy, which affects 0.05% of pregnancies, so it's super rare. And it's when 2 sperm fertilise the egg. So there's like too much genetic material in there for the baby to survive. And this can also cause like overgrowth of the placenta and abnormal cells to form. And it turns out mine's even more rare because baby had a heartbeat. Partial molar pregnancy, had no idea what that was, never even heard of it before. I was then told because I had a partial molar pregnancy, the cells can become cancerous, so I may need further chemo treatment. I wish at the time I'd asked more questions, because hearing that is so scary, and I don't want to scare anyone who is going through partial molar pregnancy right now, because it is very rare cases that it turns cancerous, and it is almost 100% treatable. I didn't have a choice in passing the pregnancy naturally or taking the medical tablet. I had to go straight to surgery, so I was then booked in for that a week later. So it was just like, oh my gosh, like, it was awful enough being told that we'd just lost our baby, then being told I could potentially have cancer, and then having to have the surgery for all this next week. It was just so overwhelming. So she'd then given me a leaflet with all the information on partial molars and a date and time of my surgery at the top, and then we were kind of sent on our way. And it was just like, what has just happened? I just remember I went into like a bit of shock. I'd stopped crying, and I think the shock of all what I'd just been told had just kind of made me kind of freeze. And as we were walking out, I just remember thinking, I can't walk out in front of all those pregnant women and people getting happy news and scans. And the room was, I remember the waiting room was full, and I just said to the doctor, I said, is there any other exit we can go out of? Like, I can't face that right now after just being told. And she was like, no, I'm really sorry. So I kind of then had to just psych myself up and be like, right, come on, just walk through the doors and just kind of do it. And then a moment I'll never forget, the sonographer came running over to me, and she grabbed me and she said, I'll take you out another exit so you don't have to go through there. And I just remember, I get teary thinking about it. Oh, dear me. And I just remember being so thankful to her in that moment, because I think that would have just really tipped me over the edge I was already tipped over. And she, as we walked towards another exit, she was like, I know this might not help you feel better, but just so you know that you're not the only one today getting bad news. And I'm really, really sorry you're having to go through this. And her saying that weirdly helped, because I thought, because to me, I was going back through a room full of happy pregnant women, and, you know, and
everyone looking at their scans and things, but I mean, the stats are insane. I found out after, it's like 1 in 4 pregnancies can end in miscarriage. So honestly, I was really thankful to that lovely lady in that moment. I remember we just walked back to the car in silence. I couldn't even speak. I was just reading the leaflet on the way home, and then as soon as we got through the door, I just burst into tears. And then I don't really remember much from those few days. I remember crying so much. I was really, really anxious about the surgery, because for me, I have a huge phobia of hospitals. I just hate them. And I have an even bigger phobia of blood tests and cannulas, and I knew I would have to have blood tests and cannulas throughout this surgery. So I think I was almost like focusing on that more than when I should have really been grieving at that point. So I was kind of dealing with so many emotions in my head. Yeah, weird. I can't really remember much about that time. I think the hardest thing for me was like the waiting. We had like 5 days to kind of wait for the surgery. I really struggled with my body in those days because I'd gone from being like so proud of my body and like creating life to almost like resenting it. I'm sure anyone who's been through a miscarriage can relate in that way. I just felt like I couldn't even shower without like crying, and I couldn't even look at my tummy because it just was like this constant like reminder. So that was really hard in that sense. That has definitely got better. So anyone who's going through this right now and feels like that, it can feel like it's never going to end. But it does get better. Your confidence does slowly start to come back, I promise. You know what though, I'm really thankful I told my family and my closest friends early on, because I found it easier telling them that we'd lost baby. I found it harder telling people we were pregnant and now we're not. So I think that whole stigma around telling people at 12 weeks shouldn't be a stigma, because I am so glad I told them when we did, and we could have that like happy time. Oh, sorry, my battery died. So Monday came and I went for my pre-op, and she honestly put my mind at ease so much, because I think the thought of going into any surgery is really scary. It's even more difficult when you're trying to grieve and going through the loss. It's a lot. So she was incredible, and she really put my mind at ease, and I explained to her how scared I was of blood tests and cannulas and things like that. I don't know if I've said previously, but the surgery I needed to get was called a D&C. You do have to be put to sleep for that kind of surgery. So she just kind of talks you through the procedures and how everything works and stuff like that. It is a very regular procedure, and they do it daily. So it just put my mind at ease. I felt very safe and know that I would be in their hands. Then Wednesday came and I was still obviously really anxious. I just hate hospitals. I hate going into them, and knowing I was getting surgery just really scared me. But again, the nurses were amazing. The NHS staff throughout all of this have been absolutely incredible, so compassionate and lovely. So yeah, Wednesday came, Lee came with me. He obviously couldn't come in to the theatre room. The surgery was an hour, so I had to stay in hospital a little bit longer because I lost quite a lot of blood. But I was discharged that day, so that was good. So everything went well and was fine. And then came home. I was still really delirious from the anaesthetic, and I was quite delirious for, I'd say, like for a few days while the medication and everything wore off. And then like day 3, I started to get quite intense cramping. I was only getting this pain in like the evenings, and it got to day 3, I think. The pain was really intense. So we rang the emergency gynae unit, and they said to come in, and they did a scan. And it turns out some of my lining was still really thick. So tissue then needed to pass naturally. There was talks of me having another D&C, which I was so thankful I didn't have. But then also it was really traumatic passing the tissue naturally as well. I won't go into detail about that. I'm still a bit like, I'd say a bit traumatised by that side of things. But I think that was because that was just a rare occasion for me. I don't want that to scare anyone who is getting a D&C. That was just unfortunately what happened to me. Anyway, after going through that and everything had passed, I then bled, I'd say for like 2 weeks lightly. It just felt like a light period. After you've had the surgery, you've then got to be monitored at the hospital. So I had to go for blood tests once a week. I obviously dreaded, but it has helped. I mean, it has helped my fear. I'm not as terrified now. And every single nurse I've had has been incredible with me. Yeah, this is to check your HCG levels, which is something you produce when you're pregnant, and they've got to get down to 0 before you discharge. So I'm still being checked at the moment. So what I forgot to say was, after the D&C, the abnormal tissue and cells is then sent to a specialist hospital. So in my case it was Sheffield, and they test to make sure that it was a partial molar pregnancy and that no cells have become cancerous. So I had to wait 6 weeks for that, which was just terrifying. I was just so anxious, but luckily they came back absolutely fine. I don't need chemotherapy, they're not cancerous. So I'm so thankful. I've now got to be monitored until my levels go down to 0 and stay at 0. I'm not sure how long I've got to be monitored for yet. It also depends as well whether you've got a complete molar pregnancy or a partial molar pregnancy. So that's where I'm at the moment. I've got one more blood test next Wednesday, and then it goes onto urine samples, and then we'll just see how long that lasts. So I'm almost at the end of it. Just emotionally, it's taken such a toll on both of us. Like I talked about the surgery and everything, but I mean, that was the easy part. I think the emotional side of things is where it's really, really hard. But having Lee has been incredible. Like, we're both very open with how we feel, and we talk about our emotions, and like every morning we check in on each other, like, how are you feeling today? And like, if he's having a good morning, maybe I'm not, or I'm feeling stronger and he's not. We've got each other to support, and our friends and family have been absolutely incredible as well. I think for me personally, talking about it really, really helps, and I hope this can help anyone else who is going through partial molar pregnancy loss or any kind of pregnancy loss. I've not gone into like loads of detail about certain things, so if you want to know anything else, just feel free to drop me a message. I honestly don't mind. It really does help talking about it, because I shared it on my Instagram a couple of weeks ago, and I've been having like some really sad but amazing conversations with other women who have gone through it. There was actually 5 women who had reached out, had partial molar pregnancy, and as awful as it is that they've gone through it, and I hate that they've had to go through it as well, I found comfort in speaking to them, because then you're like, oh gosh, you get it. Like, you can speak to your family and friends about it, and they understand to a certain level, and they're so supportive, but speaking to someone who's gone through it themselves is like a different level of understanding, and it has been really like integral to my like healing process. I've gone from feeling really like scared and alone and not really knowing what this is I'm going through, to speaking to people who've also gone through it, and it just makes me think, right, my feelings are valid and everything I'm feeling is okay. And I also just think talking about miscarriage in general is really important, because unless you've gone through it yourself, you really don't know the pain and the trauma that it can cause. So many people have said to me like, oh, you're so brave for talking about it, but also if you're not ready to talk about it, you're still so brave. Like, you're going through a horrendous experience, and don't feel pressured to openly talk about it. Do it when you're ready, whether that be a family member, a friend, a counsellor. Miscarriage is still such a taboo subject and isn't talked about enough, and that's why I want to raise awareness around this subject matter as well. So I will be linking some charities below that I have been in contact with who have really helped me. And grief is such a strange thing, especially when it's a loss like this, because you grieve like the future. I can't explain it, it's strange. You'll understand if you've gone through this yourself, but it's just a different type of grief. So I'm still trying to like navigate that side of it myself. So yeah, that's what's been going on. I have taken a long time off. I took about 2 months off work, and if you're going through this experience and you need longer, don't use my kind of guidance as how much time you need off. Like, you've got to do what's best for you. Some people have a week off, some people have 2 months off, some people have longer. It totally depends on when you're ready emotionally and physically to go back to work. So yeah, you've got to do what's best for you, listen to your body and your mind, and take all the time you need. And from my experience, having a partial molar, it's like the added stress of like health worries as well, and the word cancer being thrown around, it's just terrifying. But like I said earlier on in the video, it's very rare cases and it's very treatable. Oh yeah, oh gosh, I feel exhausted after that. But I'm sorry if this video has been all over the place. Sorry, you keep snoring. This guy has honestly kept the both of us sane throughout all this. Dogs are like the best form of therapy. Absolutely love him to bits. I'm very excited to get back to YouTube and get back on with my styling videos. I've got a few in the pipeline, some jobs and things coming up. But I just wanted to come on and kind of give you guys an update of what's been going on. If I'm a little bit slower with my videos than usual, I'm just being kind to myself. So yeah, if you're going through anything like this, I'm just so sorry and sending you so much love and strength. Things do get easier, I promise you. I know they don't feel like it at the time, but they really do. Take care, and hopefully I'll see you guys very soon.